So today's episode 76. We're going to be talking, 77.
77.
You just told me that too. Today's going to be episode 77. And we're talking a little bit more about what you've been listening to lately.
Yep.
And then I want to talk just a little bit about the controversial nature of the Great Commission.
Sounds good.
Yeah. All right.
Josh, I've been listening to the Eagles.
Yes.
Not only listening to the Eagles, Greatest Hits Volume 2. You know you're a good band if you've got Greatest Hits Volume 1, Volume 2,
Right.
Volume 3, right? This is Volume 2. I'll read some of I'll go ahead and do that.
Well, I guess it depends. Did they make the album or did someone else make the album?
Well,
Because
listen,
if you make your own album of Greatest Hits, I feel like that's cheating.
I don't know the answer to that, but it certainly is. It's not much different than social media these days where, you know, a comedian will do an hour-long special and then whomever will cut up 15 seconds of that hour-long and tell jokes, and it just makes it go a long way with short videos, you know what I mean? So that's kind of what a Greatest Hits album is. So Hotel California, you've heard of that.
Oh, yeah.
You've heard of that. Heartache Tonight, Seven Bridges Road, Victim of Love, The Sad Cafe. Great song if you haven't heard it. Life in the Fast Lane, I Can't Tell You Why, New Kid in Town, The Long Run, and After the Thrill Is Gone. I mean, most of us could probably sing most of those songs by heart. What I've learned about the Eagles is, and what I've learned about many of the bands that I've studied, partly because of the podcast, sometimes I don't want to know anything more about the band than what I already know. You know what I mean? The Eagles, most of the time, is jing, 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 jing. That's the tempo, jing, jing, and it's very melodic and poetic and ballad-like. But behind the scenes, they're fighting like cats and dogs.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it takes so long to get things done. It's just a human nature is what it is. Whenever you start making money, you know, some people are worried about not just the money they're making, but the money you're making.
Right.
I'm not making enough as much as you're making. Why are you making more than? And that taunts. That just taints everything.
That's why this podcast works so well, because
We're
none of us are making
50. That's right. But you're talking about millions of dollars. The Eagles, they were huge. They took I think it was 2.5 year world tour. Man, if you're a band and you do anything and you can touch the world and sell out concerts or sell out whatever it is you're doing. I mean, if your goal is to sell out 500 seats and you go around the world and you sell out 500 seats everywhere you go, you're pretty much a big deal. They're selling out stadiums, man. Thousands of people all around the world. Unbelievable. For 2.5 years, they're going all out. Of course, there's going to be conflict.
Right.
And listen, even if you were sober as a cucumber, there'd still be conflicts. These guys are doping it up, man. And they'll tell you this is every documentary you see on the Eagles. That's one of the first things they say. You know, man, we were cocaine and LSD and pot and drinking everything. They were rock and rollers.
Right.
You can say Eagles are kind of like a country rock band. The first 2 albums, perhaps, and that was as a result of their producer. Then they got a more of a rock guy in there, and they lived like rock and roll, rock and roll famous people, and they were. So one of the unique things about the Eagles is that Don Henley is one of the main singers. Like 4 or 5 different singers, and he played drums. So he would Hotel California, that's his voice. Yeah, and he played drums while singing. That's unusual for the most part. Usually a guitarist or even like Mick Jagger don't play anything. You're just the front man.
Right.
The drummer being the front man is odd. It's a little odd.
It's like Phil Collins.
Yeah, like Phil Collins, exactly. but the stage is all set up like that. It's black except for, it's kind of dark except for the light on the drummer, and that's weird. But anyway,
yeah,
there was a lot of like 7, 8, 9 people in Eagles. 4 or 5 of them were the core of Eagles. So as of 6 years ago, that was the last documentary I studied, they were touring again. And it's funny to see guys when they come back. One of them, Joe Walsh, I think his name is, or Joe Walsh. I can't remember. I get those two mixed up. He never performed sober until the Eagles got back together, and the rest of the band said, "We want you to come back, but only if you're sober," because they were all sober.
Yeah.
He said, "Well, that'll be something new. It's worth getting sober over." He said.
Yeah.
He said, "I didn't really have anything in my life that was worth me getting sober over, so I didn't." Sad words, by the way.
Right.
But he got sober, and they came back like I said, this documentary is 6 years ago. I don't know what's happening today.
Yeah.
But it wasn't long ago where they got back together and selling out again.
Well, so that kind of brings me to a really intriguing question. One of the things you often find with people who enjoy that kind of fame, whether it's musicians or actors or whatever, you often find like they have everything they could ever want, materially, and they have money, they have fame, they have prestige, recognizability, all that kind of stuff, but they're also intrinsically unhappy. Elvis was a really good example of this, right? He battled with depression all the time, even though he was, the king of rock and roll and as popular as he was. Why do you think that is?
I think some of them, I love studying these documentaries that have a lot of people in the band. Some of them don't want to be famous. Some of them, they're a product of their environment. They want to play music.
Right.
Or they want to sing, and in order to do that, you have to be with other people. You do this, and you get famous, and that they kind of melt down. So that's one thing. Another thing is, if you're not happy with what you're doing inside of yourself, you're going to soak in everything else from everybody else, and you're going to become that person. We do that anyway, to a certain extent, right?
Yeah.
Without Christ, I don't know who I would be. And I think Christ is the answer to everything, but I don't want to cop out and say because they don't have Christ. That's not what I'm saying.
Well, no, but I was kind of hoping you'd go there because that leads me to the second part of that question, because you often find this also happens in Christian circles, like a Christian, like a Christian rock band or someone who's in Christian circles or who's doing this similar kind of stuff. They often suffer from the same types of things. And so it's easy for us to say, oh, they don't have Jesus. But I think it goes a little bit further than that, because even the Bible refers to, like, it's not just enough to believe that God exists. There's a component of that has to be personal relationship.
Right.
And you can easily say that that's missing in the secular world, in like a secular rock band or whatever. But it's a little bit more difficult to say that in a secular worship group band or whatever. Yeah. So I think it's the quality of that relationship.
Even Jeremy came on this podcast way down whenever we were in the 20s probably.
Yeah.
And he said, when somebody's on stage and you're performing and there's hundreds of people looking at you, you're going to deal with ego. Right. You have to deal with that ego. Why are you there? Who are you there for? And all this. So even somebody who was Christ-centered, they're going to struggle. And I'll piggyback on that by saying this. Whenever I was studying Fleetwood Mac, it really hit me that, man, that's a hard life to live, because before they go on tour, they had a cocaine budget. I just want you to sit on that for a second. They had a cocaine budget. Not only did they have a cocaine budget, they hired somebody that they name by name in these audiobooks that would be the person that would bring them the cocaine in whatever city or state they went to. So you get off stage You go to wherever you're going, and it's already there for you. If the other day, Donna asked me if I wanted her to get me some
Cocaine?
No, not cocaine. That was months ago. She asked me that. We're over. No, she was going to get some small individual cheesecakes for her neighbors and for my sister-in-law, her sister, that are coming down. And I thought, yeah, I want some, but no, don't get them for me. Because if they're at the house, guess what? Destry's going to eat them.
Oh, yeah. I've experienced that many times.
If somebody were to deliver me sugary sweets every day, I'd probably eat them. I try not to, right? I try not to. I went to Walmart earlier, didn't get one. That was success for me.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because it's right there. You go.
I know what you mean. My wife's a pastry chef. I have buttercream on my shirt as we speak.
That's right. I don't know how you do it. So I'm
look,
saying
this is how I do it. I'm approaching spherical.
What I'm saying is I am not criticizing or judging these. I'm saying I am glad that I am not in a place where it's that easy to get, because I struggle with that, and I have Christ in my life. You know what I mean?
Right.
It is pretty easy. You just got to stop at the store and pick it up. You know what I mean? But it's always a struggle. Can you imagine if that was something like cocaine or drinking or whatever? I am thankful that I didn't go on a different path and become addicted to that type of thing, because I could have very well done it.
Right.
I lived around it in a small town in North Carolina. I lived around it. It was available to me, and I did drink, but I never did cocaine.
Yeah.
By the grace of God, I never did cocaine. So anyway, if somebody's delivering it to you night after night after night, and you've been up all night and you've got to perform in a couple hours, I'll just do a little bit more cocaine or speed or wherever is available.
Right, just to help you get through.
That is just.
I can imagine that's a bunch of stress too, because there's hundreds of people relying on your performance.
Absolutely.
To make their to make their paycheck.
Well, I think not having been in that situation, I can't really think about that. But my instinct is to say this. I think that comes later. At first, these musicians are so into what they're doing, and then people are bringing them to places where they want to go, and then after a while the musicians start taking ownership of that, and they realize, wow, for a year these people have been around us, the roadies, everything else. Now they're depending on me, and that's another level of stress. But at the beginning, I think it's just getting recognized.
Or either that, if you're, if you're in the mindset of ownership, like this is my thing that I do or whatever, then the realization comes that there's hundreds of people around you who are taking you from place to place for you to perform. You're the product that they're selling. Yeah. And do you really own that?
All that stuff I think is true, depending on the person, depending on how how just the individual, how they soak all that in.
Right.
You think of Elvis, like you said, was he a product? Good gravy, was he a product?
I would imagine you'd struggle with who you are.
Yeah, right. And I know, listen, I'm a huge Elvis fan. I was born in Memphis, Tennessee. I've been to Graceland, and my cousin Cindy, whom I adore, she still lives close to Memphis. She grew up in Memphis. We used to go back there and visit all the time. And Cindy and Buddy are our listeners. They are a percentage of our total listeners. Thank you, Cindy and Buddy. We love you very much. They'll be down here in July, by the way.
Oh, cool.
But I have listened to, I would venture to say, at least a little bit of every Elvis album, which there are a lot. In the early years, so many gospel albums, and the best gospel. Oh my gosh, my mother and I listened to it whenever we're in the car together, and you just can't fake that. I just don't think you can. So I know Christ was in him. I know there's too much fruit for there not to have been. And having grown up around a mother the way that she was a Christ follower, it just shows you that, man, that's a powerful later on in life, he just got away from it. Who knows what he did at night? But I guarantee you, he still believed in God, and he still had Christ in him, and he was still a Christ follower. But
it's that soil where the weeds grow and eventually choke you out.
You're talking about people delivering things to you.
Mm-hmm.
People would pay to be able to deliver things to Elvis Presley.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Women, drugs, whatever it is, doctors, prescribing all these things, so they could say, I'm Elvis Presley's doctor.
Mm-hmm.
You think you can say no to Elvis?
Yeah.
I need some sleep. He had that same stuff, Proparol, that Michael Jackson had and died of. And if you've never had it, if you've never been under the Proparol for operation, and you come out of it and you think, this is the stuff that Michael Jackson needed to go to sleep, oh my gosh, it is so strong. You are out.
Yeah.
Like that. I remember when I had open heart surgery, we recorded the whole thing. We didn't record the surgery. We recorded me praying with in the waiting room, the last room before I went back. We recorded me praying with the team that was going to be operating on me. One of the most powerful moments in my entire life. Donna has a very end of it on video. So we prayed and opened my eyes, and they started wheeling me out. And unbeknownst to me, they had already started giving me some stuff back here, right? Some stuff to chill me out. I kind of knew he was talking to me, and I knew he was doing it, but I forgot about it. And I remember seeing the video shows me going out of the door, and I said, I love you, sweetheart. Turned around, and I remember looking at this corner that was right in front of me thinking, well, I must be going right around that corner. And that's the last thing I remember.
Yeah.
Seconds after I was wheeling out. Yeah, I must be going. And I never saw that corner. I never saw what was around that corner. I was out, and I didn't come to until 5.5 hours later.
Yeah.
My
It's
lungs,
like when I got my wisdom teeth taken out.
That's exactly
right. I only
right.
remember getting placed in the car for my dad to bring me home. The next thing I remember is waking up at home on the couch.
Just
no
done.
idea what happened before, during, whatever.
Can you imagine needing that to go to? What a sad place to be. You need that to go to sleep.
Right.
Wow. What have you gone through to get to that level? It's a shame. It really is.
A lot of things afflicting you.
Yeah. And I instead of being judgmental, I'm just so thankful that I've never struggled that, because it could be any one of us. We could be there. You know what I mean? So quickly.
I like being able to fall asleep very fast.
I do too. I take a supplement and I go to sleep. You know what I mean?
Right.
Maybe 2
Have
grams.
a little bit of coffee, take a nap.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Anyway, so the Eagles, awesome. I think they're still, I don't want to say together, but I think if they're in their 70s now. So, going through a show would be successful.
What prompted them coming back?
What prompted them?
Yeah. Like, is it just they want to make more money, or
Well, what they're saying is that people were not pressuring them, but everybody wanted it. Okay. They kept hearing people wanted to, and I think it was Glenn Fry, I think, said that one of the lead singers said that every like Rolling Stone or magazine article that he saw that took a poll of thousands of rock and roll listeners, what band would you like to see come back? Eagles was always up in the top 1, 2, 3.
Okay.
So they met and said, let's give it a shot. I can't imagine that I can imagine that money had something to, you know what I mean? I would imagine.
Well, it probably they wanted to, but they wouldn't unless it was,
they didn't want to go in the hole to
financially
do it.
viable.
Right. I'm sure if they did their money right, or at least halfway right, they still had. But, all the musicians I've known, they play to play. They play the guitar, guitarists especially. If they could play 24/7, they would, and they almost do.
Right.
24/7. Drummers a little bit different because you got to have drums, but we're always doing this.
Yes.
You know what I mean, right?
It annoys my wife to no end. when
But
I do that.
guitarists, there's always a guitar. I always have Chris always has a camera near him. I always have a camera near me.
I always have a calculator near me.
You always, me too, right here, baby. But anyway, so I would imagine other people, some producers and things saying, "Hey guys, if we get together, I can guarantee you this much, or I guarantee you we'll be able to travel." And maybe some of the musicians are saying, "Oh, now I could travel with my family, in a RV, whatever." I don't know. I'm just trying to think of what they would say.
Relive the glory days.
That's what I would do.
Yeah.
If I could go back to racing my bike right now and be more luxurious about it, and Don and I could fly, I could race, come back, and if I was 20 years younger and I was in much better shape, 40 pounds lighter, all that stuff is all I need to start racing.
Yeah, no doubt.
Anyway, Josh, that's all I did. I'll tell you this. Let me close with this, okay?
Okay.
Last week, I just quickly mentioned how I was going to tie in the Eagles to Charles Manson.
That's right. You did say that.
Yep.
Yeah.
So this is what I'm going to do.
This is the Bible part, right?
Yes, we're going. Yeah, that's right. Not everybody has that version of the Bible. Okay, so Don Henley, one of the Eagles, dated Stevie Nicks.
Right.
Stevie Nicks, according to her words, was in love with Don Henley. She would have married Don Henley.
Right.
They actually had a baby. I don't want to say anything else about that. Okay, because it just fires me up, man. Whenever I heard they were talking. Okay. Dated Stevie Nicks. So Stevie Nicks was in Fleetwood Mac with Christine McVie. Right? Christine McVie just recently passed. She was the piano player from Britain, very prim, proper, always had a cigarette and a wine glass in her hand. Very attractive young lady. Christine McVie was in a band, Fleetwood Mac with Stevie Nicks, okay? Brian Wilson, a Beach Boy, had a romance with Christine McVie.
Okay.
With me? Brian Wilson was driving around California one fine day, and he picked up two women hitchhikers. The two women hitchhikers were two of Charlie Manson's, quote, girls. And that's how Brian Wilson met Charles Manson. And Brian Wilson, he kind of went off on his own thing. He was,
right.
I don't want to say mentally ill, but he was off kilter somehow. So whatever happened, but he would hang around with Charles Manson and them.
Like a 6 degrees of separation thing.
It's exactly right.
Yeah.
It's exactly what it was. But us in here might have 6 or 7 degrees separation from Charles Manson too. I don't know. Maybe we could figure that
Probably,
out.
yeah.
I hope not.
That's the idea, right? There's no more than 6 degrees of separation between any two people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's right. I
remember when I heard that the first time. I remember thinking, I was a little kid. I think it was I forget where I heard it. It doesn't matter. But anyway, what came to mind was like me and a president, right?
You and a president, okay.
And I remember my 6th grade teacher, before she was a teacher, she worked as a bank teller in Houston. And one of her customers or account holders or whatever was one of the Bush family.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So there's like 4 degrees of separation between me and President Bush.
How about that? I always knew that.
Right? So, I mean, it goes to show you, like, it doesn't matter how far apart two people are. There's always
so true.
No more than 6 degrees of separation between them.
Josh, this is my hope, and I'm handing this over to you, okay? I hope somewhere along the line, in the next couple times we record, there's going to be a kitty cat come in here and sit on our laps. I don't know if it's going to happen or not. There's 2 cats somewhere really close to us, but I don't think that they will, but hopefully that's what I can hope.
Maybe. Who knows?
We'll see.
Speaking of 6 degrees of separation, I want to talk real quick about, because we're really running out of time today, but we all know the Great Commission, right? In fact, just this past Sunday, we were in our Sunday morning service, there's a comparison drawn between the Coca-Cola Commission and the Great Commission, right? The Coca-Cola Commission, the company, they want everybody in the world to know the name Coca-Cola. And we compared that to the Great Commission because a couple times in Scripture, Jesus sends out his followers and says, take this message to the rest of the world. And the one we're all usually familiar with the most is in Acts 1, it says, to Jerusalem and Judea and Samaria and the othermost parts of the world. And we kind of brush over that as just like 3 different locations. It just kind of tells us like we start here and we kind of spiral outwards and go to the rest of the world, not realizing really how controversial that statement was at the time, because there's really, at the time, there was such animosity that was packaged along with the name Samaria that Jesus, Jesus saying that was one of the last things he said before he ascended up in heaven, had to have blown their minds and been like, "Are you serious?" And so just to give a little bit of the history of it, so during the first century there, the term Judea, it referred to the area that used to be called the Kingdom of Judah back in the Old Testament. The Kingdom of Judah was the last time that Israel was a self-governing nation. Ever since the Babylonians took it over, all the way up until 1948, Israel was not a self-governing country. It was always a province of something else, and that's what the term Judea sort of harkens to, because Judea was a province in the Roman Empire, whereas Judah was a self-governing kingdom. And back in ancient Israel, before the kingdoms split right after Solomon, it was a united kingdom, and the capital of that kingdom was Jerusalem. And right next to Jerusalem was the city of David, where that's the part where David built his house and all that kind of stuff. Well, when the two kingdoms separated, the northern kingdom, Israel, was no longer part of Judah, and so it needed its own capital. And the capital of the northern kingdom changed a couple times before it settled on the city of Samaria under King Omri in the Old Testament. And one of the things that characterized the northern kingdom more than anything else was its idolatry. In fact, that tradition started in Judges, where a pagan priesthood was set up to worship these other gods, and it was centralized in, at the time, the territory of Dan. But it said that tradition started there and continued until the northern kingdom, that didn't even exist yet in Judges, but until the northern kingdom was eventually conquered by the Assyrians. But the northern kingdom established as its capital Samaria, and it was the capital, and it was the center of idol worship. In fact, King Ahab built this huge temple to Baal in Samaria. So there's that aspect of it. But when the Assyrians took it over, conquered the northern kingdom, they took the people there and they started spreading them out over the Assyrian Empire, because they would, in one of their ways that they would conquer a people group is they would take that people group, spread them out over the Assyrian Empire, and they would lose like their cultural identity over time. And they would bring other people in and sort of mix everyone together. So fast forward to the time of the New Testament, and you have the province of Judea, which was where the southern kingdom was, who still has the Sanhedrin court, and still has the Pharisees, who are the religious group that are tied to the upkeep and constant obedience to recognition of the ancient documents, the Torah. You have the Sadducees, who are all about the religious practices of the temple. You have the scribes that are really about the preserving the documents, that kind of stuff. very, very Jewish, very ensconced in the tradition of this region of Judea, which used to be the empire or the kingdom of Judah, tied to the throne, the kingly line of David, all that stuff. That's what they were in. And right before Jesus made that statement about taking the gospel, to Jerusalem, to Judea, to Samaria, to the other parts of the world, they had asked him, like, hey, now that you've died and you've rose again and we're all here, are you going to restore the kingdom of Israel now? Are you going to reset it back to its former glory? And he said, no. He said, I want you to take the gospel to Jerusalem, Judea, Samaria, other parts of the world. And that was a really controversial statement to make, because in the people's mind who were Jews, they looked at the people from that conquered northern area as like half-breeds. They were corrupted. They weren't true Jews. In fact, the animosity was so great that there was hatred from the other direction as well. They thought, the right place to worship isn't Jerusalem, where the temple is. It's on Mount Gerizim, which is up here, which was where Joshua and Israel, all that stuff, they first congregated when they were going through and conquering the land of Canaan. They got on Mount Gerizim and Mount Ebal and started reading the law to each other. And Mount Gerizim was really, really significant in all that. And that was set up. And even when Jesus encountered the woman at the well, who said, like, why are you even concerned with me? I'm a Samaritan. I'm from Samaria.
It's well entranced in their DNA almost, right?
Yeah, like she wasn't expecting him to even pay her any attention, because she knew he's supposed to hate her and she's supposed to hate him.
Yeah, right.
And even when it came to like the tradition of those places, she even went back and said, our fathers worshipped in this mountain, and you say we're supposed to worship in Jerusalem. Here again, recalling that conflict there. But what Jesus was saying, he almost in a way was answering the question, are you here to restore the kingdom? Because what he was guiding them to do was admit and practice this this concept that the gospel is not just for the religious elite. It's not just for people who are traditionally Jewish or genealogically Jewish. It's also for those people you hate over there that you call half-breeds that were corrupted centuries ago.
For everybody.
It's those Samaritans. It's for those people who set that town up specifically to be a center for idol worship. Because that's the subtle implication there too, is towards the end of the kingdom of Judah, Jerusalem was being turned into the same thing. That's what we learn about in Ezekiel, is they had set up idols in the temple itself to these Babylonian gods and all these other gods, and were worshiping them in the temple where God was supposed to be worshipped. And so there was kind of this pagan equivalence there. And so it kind of calls back to that, like, you're not better than Samaria. Samaria is not better than you, and neither of you are worse than each other. The gospel is for everybody. We're all standing at the foot of the cross, having been tainted by sin, and this gospel message is for all of us, that we all have this problem with sin. We all deserve an eternal separation from God, and it's what Christ did on the cross that pays that penalty for us. And so take that message. Start here where you are, Jerusalem. Take it to the rest of Judea. But also, you're going to go to these people who you think are not even deserving of God, to Samaria, and you're going to take it to them. Once you take it to them, take it to the rest of the world. And I think that's really cool, because it establishes that we're all undeserving, but we get it anyway.
We can apply that today to today. I don't. Maybe there's somewhere in the Bible that I missed, but I don't remember Jesus saying, you should like everybody. You should really want to hang out with
Right.
everybody, no matter if you got stuff in common with them or not. It was certainly love everybody, but that's a different thing.
Yeah. It was realized that everybody is loved by God.
Yes, right.
And deserves this message.
Boy, if you think about it, it's hard to pray for people you don't like.
Right.
And that's
Absolutely.
kind of the
Well, it
realm that
depends
we're
how you
in
pray
right
for
now.
them.
What's that?
It depends how you pray for them. Because I can pray for someone I don't like.
It's a good point. It's a good point.
It might not be an answered prayer, though.
It's hard to positively pray
Right.
for blessings for somebody that you don't really care for, and
Yeah.
we still struggle with that.
Yeah.
It's a struggle, but I'm glad that people pray for me that may not like me, one way or another, because I got plenty of people who don't like me for sure. You don't, Josh. I mean, I'm just speaking for myself. But anyway, thanks, man. Anything else you want to add to that before we?
Oh, there's a ton of stuff we could add, but we can talk about that later.
We did have to do a abbreviated version just because of things in our real life. So
schedule
thank Chris.
conflicts.
Yep. Thanks, Chris, for being here. Thank you, Josh, for being here, making time. Appreciate it. And we'll see all y'all next week for 78, right?
Yes.
All right. See ya.